All right, let's go to the main event. Nick Nemeth and AJ Francis. And I think this is part of the show where the people that don't really watch TNA and they just kind of wait for my reviews before they actually check stuff out are going to expect me to say that this was a bad match, that AJ Francis sucks, and yada, yada, yada. Guys, I'm here to tell you that not only does AJ Francis not suck, AJ Francis is pretty good. And if he took himself a bit more seriously on television, I'm not talking about in life, I'm talking about AJ Francis, the character, right? The franchise, Top Dollar himself. If he was a more serious character and had more serious matches, I happen to think that he actually could do pretty well for himself. And I thought this match was a pretty good match. This was not a 30-minute kick out of everything classic. If you're going to say, oh, well, was it Will Ospreay level? Nope. That's not what they do. That's not what this match is supposed to be. AJ Francis is a good heel. He got the crowd into it. And at several points in the match, he got the crowd thinking that there could be a title change. He showed some pretty good athleticism. It's actually great athleticism during certain parts. And he kind of came across as a monster at different times. I ultimately thought that by the end of the match, you left thinking that AJ Francis is actually pretty good. And if he applied himself more, he could be a lot better. I'm here to tell you that AJ Francis is not a bad wrestler. He does not suck. And in fact, at times, he's actually pretty good. And I thought this match was a good match. I thought this match was a good main event. Good. I still think that the four-way should have closed the show because that had the most stakes. And I know the title was on the line, but nobody believed AJ Francis could win. Nobody believed it, right? Which is why I would not have closed the show with this match. I know it's the world title, but there were some empty seats after the Hardy Boys match was over, right? It was not a crazy amount, but you could probably tell that maybe like 100 or 200 people left out of 900 people. That wouldn't have happened if Joe Hendry, if that four-way match was in the main event, right? That just wouldn't have happened. So I would have put this match on probably first and got it out of the way. And it still would have been a good match. But since they closed the show with it, I don't think people left in a disappointment. I thought they got a pretty good main event. We're not talking like 4 to 5 stars here, but like 3.5. And I thought AJ Francis availed himself pretty well. I thought it was a decent match. I could have done without some of the Casey Navarro stuff, but they did the whole, Casey interferes and they kick him out. And that always gets a big pop. At one point, AJ Francis did an attitude adjustment from the ring apron, or from the ramp, because they had the stage with the ramp leading up to the ring, and he threw him over the top rope and he slung that boy halfway across the ring and he went plunk. That was a pretty stiff one. I thought that was a really good moment in the match. And then AJ Francis also hit a middle rope moonsault that looked incredible for a big 300-pounder like that. And AJ Francis is actively improving as a wrestler. He really is. And I think Billy makes a good point here. AJ Francis is a great athlete and a legit super heavyweight and is getting better as a wrestler too. People need to remember that AJ Francis has only been wrestling for 5 years. Yeah, I think he has improved a lot since his time in WWE. I think his time in TNA has been valuable. I know that his contract expires at the end of this month. I think they're going to keep him. I think that I think he's been a net positive for the company, and I think that they have been positive for him. I think the two people belong together, and I would like to see more of this stuff out of AJ Francis, and I think that if he can, I think that if they had been building him up for a little while, I don't know, certain internet fans would reject him no matter what. Like, just because he was top dollar on WWE. So there's going to be a certain segment of the audience that he's never going to win over. And you got to just be okay with that. But I think that if he continues on the path that he's on and they give him bigger matches against really good wrestlers, I think eventually he could actually end up being pretty good. And being kind of a guy that you can put in, main events on television, main events on these shows, co-main events, maybe even be, I know he won the digital media title, but maybe be like, if they ever get the international belt off PCO, like holding like mid-card, like upper mid card level belts and doing big matches and stuff like that. So I thought this match was pretty good. I'm not going to go like 4 stars on it or nothing like that. I don't think anybody that watches it would, but I thought that it was pretty good. All right. So overall, final resolution, big thumbs up from me. I think Lucha said he gave it a B. I think B is a fair grade because it was a B level show, and I thought they delivered. I thought if you paid your $10 for Impact Plus or for TNA Plus this month, I thought you got your money's worth. All right, let's get to the chat real quick, and then I gotta go. I've already been on the air for almost 90 minutes. All right. Any quick thoughts on Silva, Carlos Silva, the new Anthem president? I'll be honest, I don't have a whole lot of thoughts. So Carlos Silva is replacing Anthony Ciccione, who replaced Richard Schaefer. So we had Richard Schaefer come over he was a former Golden Boy Boxing president, and he was Floyd Mayweather's promoter. He came to Anthem. He did absolutely dick. He didn't do a goddamn thing. And he went back, and now he's back with Mayweather, and I think he's doing some other he's back in boxing, doing some other promotional stuff. Carlos Silva comes in. He worked with World Series of Fighting, which is now PFL. And PFL has no ratings and can't draw any fans. In fact, TNA is a bigger draw than PFL. So, but they have been able to secure funding from the Saudis to be able to have a pretty sustainable company. Nobody watches it and nobody goes to the shows, right? TNA outdraws them by a significant amount. Even with former UFC heavyweight champion Francis Ngannou in their company, TNA kills them, right? So, he has had several other sports businesses and has had some success. I don't think that he's going to do anything for the company. Unless I see some evidence that this position actually matters, I think it's status quo. I don't think that he adds anything to the company. I thought that Richard Schaefer was going to be a big hire because he has had a track record of major success. He was a real guy. Golden Boy Promotions was the biggest boxing promotion in the world for a long time. They were bigger than Top Rank for a while. And he ultimately ended up leaving, and he did some stuff on the outs, like other boxing stuff, but he just became Floyd Mayweather's like promoter and John Jones's agent. So I thought like his connections would be big for the company, and nothing ever happened. So I would want to see some evidence that this is important before I actually pass judgment on it. I don't think it means anything, to be honest with you. Okay. Any thoughts on Rhino finishing up with TNA tonight? Yeah. You know what? He's been around since 2019, so he's been in the company for the last 5 years. I think he's been a producer agent. He's a Scott D'Amore guy, and Scott D'Amore's guys are getting phased out. Contract expires this weekend, and he's done with the company. They put him into the Hall of Fame. I thought they've treated Rhino very well. They've treated him like a legend. He's always been in not really in marquee matches, but he's always had a presence in the company, and they bring him out every once in a while, and they treat him like a legend, and it's time for him to go do something else for a while. Maybe he'll go and be an agent in NXT or something like that. But I don't see this as being a bad thing for TNA. It just like when I saw this, I was like, yeah, it makes sense. Scott, like all the Scott D'Amore talent and Scott D'Amore agents and Scott D'Amore guys are being phased out, and he very much fits that mold. In fact, it would not surprise me to see him just be like actively involved with Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling going forward. That makes sense to me. He's a Detroit guy. He can just drive across the border and go help out Scott. I'm pretty sure that's just what's going to happen. I don't think TNA was fighting to keep him, and he probably, Scott D'Amore, he's like, they're like close friends. I get the feeling Rhino is getting paid a lot of money and wasn't really bringing much revenue in. And so this makes a whole lot of sense to me. I'm completely okay with it. He had a good 5 years, commensurate to what he brings to the team. He had a very good 5 years, though. He had some pretty good matches during his run too, occasionally, and he was in some big storylines. Was never a top push guy, but nor should he have been at this stage of his career. But I thought that Rhino always got treated pretty fairly here, and good for him for having a good five year run, ending it by going into the Hall of Fame in his hometown, and then he also got a big spot in that Battle Royal. Yeah, so and then they gave him another big moment in the taping afterwards. So yeah, good for Rhino, good for TNA. And it was more than time to move on though. But all right, guys, that is going to do it for me this week on Brace for Impact. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being subscribers to the Patreon. Thank you for being a subscriber to the YouTube channel. Hit that like button. Throw down a comment. I would greatly appreciate it. All right, guys. Until next time, mahalo. Hold your breath, but it won't last. The walls are closing in, and there we stand.